Okay, so let's start just by talking through this right here. So the greatest common factor is one of the methods that we're going to use to factor a polynomial. Okay, so there's lots of different methods that we can use. This is going to be the first one that we start talking about. So steps. First, you have to find out what the greatest common factor is. Okay, you check coefficients and you check variables. Okay, if it's going to be a variable, it has to be present in all of the terms, and it has to be the smallest exponent that's present. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's really important, something that you want to go back and look at multiple times. Then once you have that, you divide every term by the greatest common factor, and what's left over goes into the parentheses, and then you check your work. So that's going to be easier to show you how to do it. So I'm going to leave this kind of up here at the top of the page so that we can look at it, and then we're going to look here at a few examples. So I'm going to start with example number 1. Okay, so here I have, we're going to start by looking for the greatest common factor. So 7, we're looking at coefficients, 7 and 49. So we're looking for a greatest common factor of 7 and 49. So remember, 7 is one of those prime numbers, so it's just 1 and 7. So if 49 goes into 1 and 49 also has a factor of 7, 7 has to be the greatest of the two. So 7 is going to be that greatest common factor for the coefficients. Now the variables, the variable has to be present in all of the terms. Well, here there's an x, but here there's not. So x cannot be part of the greatest common factor. It just has to be 7. Okay, so our GCF here is going to be 7. That's what we're going to be using. Step 2, we're going to divide each of these terms by the greatest common factor. So we're going to do 7x divided by 7, and we're going to do 49 divided by 7. Okay, and so what happens here is, so remember, 7 is our greatest common factor. 7x divided by 7 is just x. Okay, that's all that we're left with. And 49 divided by 7 is 7. And so the remainder here is the other factor. That's what's in the parentheses. So 7 is the greatest common factor. Once we pulled it out by dividing, we're left with this factor of x plus 7. And so that is going to be our final answer. And then we want to check your work by just putting it back in there. Okay, so we would do a quick check, and we would multiply 7 times x is 7x, and 7 times 7 is 49, and that's what I started with. So this is the correct answer. Okay, so we're going to do a few more examples of this because it does get a little bit more complicated as you add more to it. So look at number 5 here. With number 5, we start again with coefficients. We're looking for the greatest common factor between 64 and 40. Okay, so 64, we've got factors, let's see, I'm just going to write them right here. 1 and 64, we've got 2 and 32, we've got 4 and 16, 8 and 8, and then with 40, we've got 1 and 40, we've got 2 and 20, 4 and 10, 8 and 5. Okay, I think that's it. And so then the greatest that match here are 8. So 8 is going to be the number that I'm going to use as the greatest common factor. Then we check variables. A and B are here, but they're not here, so we can't use them. So we're going to move on down and we're going to divide. So 8 is our greatest common factor. We're going to divide 64 by 8, and we're going to divide 40 by 8. Okay, so 8's that factor that goes on the outside. On the inside, 64 divided by 8 is 8, and negative 40 divided by 8 is negative 5, and then that AB just gets brought down because we're not dividing it by an actual number. Okay, and so that's going to be our greatest common factor and the second factor that's going to equal this. And so we just check ourselves. We do 8 minus 5, AB, we multiply it. 8 times 8 is 64, 8 times negative 5 is negative 40, AB. And so that's what I started with. So this is our final answer. Okay? All right, a couple more examples. Let's work through number 9 here. So we check coefficients. So we're looking for a greatest common factor between 10 and 5. So with 10, we've got 1 and 10, we've got 2 and 5. With 5, we've got 1 and 5. So the greatest here is going to be 5. So I'm going to divide both of these terms by 5. Okay? The second thing I have to check for is look at the variables. A variable has to be present in all the terms. Well, I do have x here and I do have x here, so I can actually use x as part of the greatest common factor this time. And so if it's present, we use the one with the smallest exponent. So this has an exponent of 2, this has an exponent of 1. So I'm going to use x to the first power as part of my greatest common factor as well. So rather than just dividing this by number, now I'm going to divide it by the 5 and the x. Okay, and so 10 divided by 5 is 2. X squared divided by x, we use those same rules that we've used in the past. So x squared divided by x is just x. And then we have 5x divided by 5x. Anything divided by itself is 1. And then we're just going to check ourselves real fast. So 5x times 2x is 10x squared. And then 5x times 1 is 5x. And that's what I started with. So this is going to work. Okay, the greatest common factor is 5x, and the other factor is 2x plus 1. All right. So you're going to continue practicing with this. We'll do a couple more examples in one more video so that you can kind of see a few more examples of this, and then you can practice the rest on your own.